Madison's young professionals are on the move, volunteering more, growing their careers, and making connections offline. If that sounds like your vibe, Madison Magnet is your low-stakes, high-energy way in. Right now, they've got discounted memberships and a calendar full of networking events, volunteer opportunities, and fun ways to get involved. It's the perfect time to join. Madison Magnet is where Madison connects, grows, and plays. So what's stopping you? Head to madisonmagnet.org to learn more and join today. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Hey y'all, before we get into today's conversation, I have a favor to ask. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. We want to know, how are we doing? This is our chance to learn more about you and what you want from CityCast, so we can serve you and this city better. If you took it last year, we would be grateful if you took it again, because we can't really use last year's data. Gotta keep it fresh. So please go to citycast.fm/survey to take the survey. It's only about 7-ish minutes long. We timed it. That's citycast.fm/survey. And bonus, in addition to getting more of what you want from us, when you take that survey, you'll also be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card. All right, CityCast Madison swag is also on the table. Fill that survey out, y'all. Again, that's at citycast.fm/survey. Let's get into the show. More big news in the governor's race. SSM Health is looking to overturn St. Mary's unionization vote. And for those energized by the World Cup, how to stay engaged in soccer right here from our little corner of the world. Here with me today on the show is Madison 365's executive editor, Rob Chappell. Rob, hey.
Hey, Bianca. How you doing?
I'm doing quite well outside of the particulate matter that we've been dealing with.
Breathe deeply.
Breathe deeply. It's like, But Rob, if you could you tell the good folks listening a bit about yourself and your work and also something you love about Madison?
Sure. Yeah. I'm a co-founder now. It'll be 11 years in a couple of weeks of Madison 365, a community-focused digital news outlet here in Madison, a nonprofit. And something I love about Madison is its proximity to nature and rural spaces. You can be in a nice urban sort of cosmopolitan city and drive half hour any direction and find yourself where you can see the stars at night. Yes. And as an outdoorsy person, it's very nice to be able to get to hiking spots and kayaking spots and fishing spots are all very close to home here.
Yeah, being out in nature is one of the best things. I agree with you so much. And one of the fun facts about me knowing you is I was introduced to you when you reached out. Well, I guess actually you'd reached out earlier than this for a story when I was living out in DC about Baraboo. But you did reach out to me before CityCast Madison launched to find out who I was as the host of the show. Yeah. And that was like my first kind of spotlight, I feel like. So I really appreciate that. I just was looking at that story the other day and just like how far we've come and being in the Madison community with you and covering it has just been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been really fun welcoming you. How long has it been now? What, like 5? I feel like it was like 2021.
3.5 years.
It's been just a pleasure to welcome you and CityCast into the media family here in Madison.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's talk about some reporting and the big news of the moment, which is, of course, the primary elections for the governor's race are coming up on August 11th, and that Democratic nomination for governor is in its home stretch. It's still very much up in the air, but there was a huge update that dropped last Friday. One of the Democratic primary candidate leaders, current Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, is out. This comes after issues with her campaign finance reporting.
As we have continued to dig into our financial reports, it has become clear that there are issues that would be an ongoing distraction, not just for this campaign, but for the primary and for Wisconsin. This race is too important to let that happen.
Dang, it's hard to argue with that, Rob. Let's talk about it. I mean, wow. What are your reactions?
I got to say, I'm not shocked. I would have been shocked a week ago. Sarah Rodriguez was the first to announce. And so she was kind of the sort of conventional wisdom establishment candidate, which is not a pejorative necessarily, but just sort of like a candidate that made perfect sense. And for whatever reason, other candidates, Francesca Hong, Mandela Barnes, have gotten more traction than she has statewide. She's never really gotten past sort of third in the polls. That said, I still didn't think she was going to drop out before the primary until Monday of last week. We learned that she had fired her campaign manager because she didn't have nearly as much money as she thought she did. She was going to make $1 million ad buy, but only had $200,000 in the bank. Seems like a problem. Turns
when you're
out,
running for executive of the state, and,
right? Yeah,
signing off on budgets. Yeah,
right. Yeah, you should probably be more on top of things than that. Trying to run with not much money for that last 3 or 4 weeks is also a problem. Turns out she probably has less money than she even thought at that time, because the campaign finance reports dropped on Wednesday.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, what did we learn from the reports and what they shed on this campaign?
Well, the candidate with the most in the bank right now is Francesca Hong. She has $410,000 in the bank, and she raised about $708,000, $709,000 during the first half of 2026. The candidate who raised the most this year so far is Mandela Barnes at $841,000, but he's only got $204,000 in the bank right now. He's just been spending more. Kelda Roy's also pretty healthy war chest with $406,000 in the bank. She raised a little over $500,000. That cash on hand includes some money that she and her family have lent to the campaign, just to be transparent. Joel Brennan has $360,000 in the bank. He's raised about $665,000 this year so far. And according to the original report filed on Wednesday, right at midnight, Sarah Rodriguez filed a report saying she has just $34,990 on hand, which is, I don't know, you can run a campaign for a week on that, much less for the next 3 weeks, much less roll that into a general election campaign.
I mean, her candidacy really fizzled out so quickly. And we had an interview on the books with her that I was really looking forward to. That was tabled. Now we know why, probably. Yeah. But like, are these kinds of campaign finance errors precedented in Wisconsin governor races?
Not
like,
that I can remember. Well, the biggest thing for me, the biggest one that I noticed, because when I saw her campaign finance report and I saw $35,000 in the bank, I literally thought that cannot be right.
It sounds wrong.
So I went back and looked at the January report filed 6 months ago, and I noticed something glaring that I've never seen before, which is that, if you're looking at your bank statement, your ending balance in February is the same as your beginning balance in March in those February, March statements, right? Campaign finance reports are the same way. Your ending balance at the end of the January report will be exactly the same as your beginning balance in your July report. She reported in her January report about $600,000 on hand, which is roughly the same as most of the other candidates had at that time. She reported in her July report that was just put out this Wednesday, only $29,000 as a beginning balance. So somewhere $570,000 disappeared. So I asked them about that. I asked the campaign about that. They didn't respond. They did file an amended report where the only change they made that I could see is they just changed the beginning balance to match the January beginning balance, which is just, they can just do that. You can just type in any number there that you want. It doesn't have to be backed up by anything.
Is there a feeling like something?
Right. Yeah. And as soon as they changed that beginning balance, then their cash on hand, which they had reported at $34,990, is now suddenly $643,000. Which doesn't seem right either. They said they were going to file yet another amendment, and then she dropped out of the race. Now they still have to file that amendment, even though they're not running anymore. But it's kind of irrelevant now because she's dropped out on Friday. Just to be sure, on Thursday morning after the campaign finance reports dropped, I was like, I must be looking at this wrong. So I actually reached out to some political operatives that I know and say, am I looking at this right? And three people were up at 7 a.m. and able to respond to me to say, no, that's the big problem. Those two numbers need to match. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reasonable explanation for those two numbers not to match.
So, I mean, is there any concern that someone is taking money? Like, of course, that would be a speculation, but that is a big discrepancy. Like, where to go?
Yeah, well, here's what we do know. We do know that in the January report, There's $138,000 worth of phantom contributions, which means that there are about 3,000, a little over 3,000 donations listed twice. And if you add up all those, it's about $275,000. So if you leave just the one that's probably real and take out the duplicates, the contributions would go down by 138,000. So that's just, I don't know if that was deliberate to just act, we're gonna fudge it a little bit just to make the number look bigger, or if that was just an accident, just bad bookkeeping. I will say the July report has 4 transactions in the amount of $8,500 each, all on the same day, for consulting fees going to a firm called Unknown with an address called Unknown, Unknown United States. That's suspicious. Again, don't know if that's...
This is messy.
It's messy. And I hate to say that, that's certainly not evidence that somebody's taking money that they shouldn't be, but somebody's not accounting for money the way they should be. That's for sure.
Right. Well, and now, she's out of the race, and I know folks can turn to your reporting to hear more in depth if you want to, go into that rabbit hole.
Right. And it's probably not worth talking too much more about it, but to rather turn to the 4 candidates that remain. And, it's hard to speculate at this point how they're going to line up, because David Crowley, the county executive of Milwaukee, and former WEDC CEO Missy Hughes both dropped out earlier, and both endorsed Rodriguez, kind of getting the establishment lined up behind the establishment candidate. I haven't seen anything about where they're going to turn next, or if they're going to make another endorsement at this point as we record.
Yeah, and just to remind folks who that 4-way race where we're at right now, we've got Mandela Barnes, Joel Brennan, Francesca Hong, Kelda Royce.
Right.
Let's talk about the Republican primary. What's cooking on that end, and where are they focused?
Well, Tom Tiffany's basically been anointed the nominee on that side. And he actually, in his finance reports show, he's raised $8.7 million in this period and has about $3 million on hand.
Oh my gosh, a lot different than 30,000.
Well, right, exactly. But that $6 million of that came from the Republican Party of Wisconsin, who has apparently decided that he's the nominee. Whoever the Democratic nominee is will get a similar influx after the primary from the Democratic Party. So that doesn't mean a lot, but basically the Republicans have conceded that Tom Tiffany is going to be their nominee. And of course, and they got their sights set on Francesca Hong. They've decided that she's going to be the nominee, or they want her to be the nominee, and they're spending a lot of money to amplify some stuff she said in the past that they think will help them.
Well, this is an ongoing conversation here. Appreciate you bringing the goods on the governor's race, Rob.
Yeah.
And, we've got more stories just around the corner, but we do want to hear from you out there listening. What do you think about the state of the race? Who do you want to win this election? Let us know. Text or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast Madison line at 608-318-3367. We love hearing from you, and we'd love to include your thoughts in an upcoming mailbag segment. If you're reading the political tea leaves, let us know. What are you seeing? That's, again, 608-318-3367. Hit us up and stay close, because we're going to be right back with more stories. Madison is a union town with deep union roots, and back in June, nurses at St. Mary's Hospital added their names to the long list of unionized employee groups in the city. But now their employer is contesting their unionization vote. Rob, Madison 365 has been covering the story for a while. Can you get us up to speed? How did we get here?
I got to give a shout out to Omar Wahid, our reporter, who's at all the rallies, covers the labor issues for us a lot. Basically, for over a year, the nurses there at SSM have been talking about unionizing. This follows other hospital groups, other clinic groups unionizing over the past few years. And they started campaigning more seriously in the fall of last year. They went through all the NLRB process of the National Labor Relations Board to do the cards and get everything in order. They voted June 11th. 89% voted in favor of forming a union. That was in the face of alleged, we haven't really 100% confirmed this, but there were allegations of significant union busting efforts and intimidation by SSM, management. There was a period during which SSM could file some paperwork to shape the election, to object to the election being called on June 11th. They didn't. turned in that paperwork. And now after the fact, they are trying to get the result thrown out based on the fact that charge nurses were part of the voting pool, there are supervisory nurses. And 20 years ago now, the NLRB ruled in a couple of different decisions, specific cases, that charge nurses should be excluded from union votes. But it was pretty explicit that this is only for that case 20 years ago. It doesn't necessarily carry precedent. All that said, even if the charge nurses' votes were taken out, the vote still would have passed.
Wow. I can't imagine it's a great environment to know that your employer is just not playing ball with you. Even after the game is done, it's like this game was called, like it finished.
We did it. And you had your opportunity to file that before and now after the fact.
Right. I mean, what were some of the core issues at play for the nurses and wanting a union? I know retention was a big concern.
I think retention was kind of the biggest thing, and which is retention and lack of retention, and the fact that there's a lot of turnover causes everything else to be difficult, right? If you're constantly having to train new nurses, getting up to speed, forming relationships with patients, forming relationships within the nursing team, it's just difficult when there's a lot of turnover. And there's a lot of turnover because staff felt that staffing was shorthanded a lot of times. The wages just weren't on par with other nursing organizations, other healthcare organizations in town. Worker safety was a big concern as well. I don't know a lot of specifics about the worker safety, but all of that leading to high turnover, which then destabilizes everything all the time. So the idea is, if we're a union, if we all have protections, if we all have a correct collective bargaining unit, people will want to stay.
Right. Like there's truly cascading effects when you have to start hiring and training new people, and then suddenly, those extra shifts that are already like hard to get covered, you don't, it's just like burden after burden piles up. Man, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture here. Is Madison still the same union haven it once, proclaimed itself to be? I always am driving by the Labor Temple. Like, what's the status?
I kind of feel like Madison's always been slightly more labor focused than the rest of the country, and probably still is, which is to say that the rest of the country is way less union focused than it ever was, 50 years ago, 30 years ago. So Madison is also less so, but still more than the country has on average. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're leading, but the whole team is behind if you're pro-union. Yeah,
exactly. So I think unions have, sort of by design, lost a lot of their political clout. But that said, harking back to what we were talking about before, AFSCME still endorsed Sarah Rodriguez and gave her a bunch of money. So they're still trying to wield some influence and probably still do have some. But it's just, for whatever reason, it's just not the labor union as a thing that you just sort of, if you're a tradesperson, you're in a union. That's just not so much the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know about the infamous Act 10, maybe they've heard about it. Can we talk about how Act 10 has really impacted all union news? Almost all, not all, but a majority of how union stories go here in the state.
Yeah, there has been a cascading effect because Act 10, which was passed by the Wisconsin legislature and signed by Scott Walker in 2011, I want to say, 2010 or 11, basically outlawed public unions, collective bargaining for public employees. And a lot of school districts and local municipalities changed, their language and changed from a union contract to an employee handbook, and sort of similar idea, but far less power, far less bargaining authority. And of course, that had a ripple effect because with strong public unions, private sector unions can say, well, we're just comparable with this AFSCME or whatever. And with the public employee unions either gone or greatly diminished, that sort of competitive spirit / solidarity brotherhood is not there anymore. So the private sector unions get much less authority in terms of collective bargaining. And also, this is the by design part, far less political clout, because labor has been typically aligned with the Democratic Party. And, just with far less money, far less influence, that's a major political ally on the left that is just has very little in the way of teeth anymore.
Yeah, places like SSM have less pressure to really follow the book and or at least the book of unionizing, that people like are not going to be looking at them as sideways as maybe they would have, say, 15 years ago in these acts. It does seem like over the past few years, we've been seeing more unionizing happening in Madison, though, overall, from hospitals to newspapers. Does that feel right to you, Rob?
Yeah, I think so. I think the trend has been headed in that direction. I think there's always a pendulum, right? Like Act 10 started the pendulum swinging away from unions, and I think a variety of factors, national factors, have got it swinging back the other way. And Madison, as has always been the case, is just a little bit ahead, maybe, of the pendulum nationwide. So you see, workers in a variety of industries, a variety of sectors organizing, and with varying levels of resistance, right?
Yeah, I remember nurses at Unity Point Health Meritor went on strike in 2025 and got union representation. Cap Times unionized this year with no contest from the employer. Back in 2024, workers at Crushing It Apparel voted to unionize, but then workers were all fired and the business shuttered. So people are out here trying.
That was a wild one. He just tried to fire everybody and rename the business, and LRB was like, no, you still have to pay.
Yeah. Remember Madison sourdough? Like it's been a wave. So we're definitely paying attention to, how businesses are acting in these parts for sure.
It would have been awkward for the progressive Capital Times to object to unionization.
Yeah, it would be quite strange.
So, 100% good on them for recognizing the union right away, but it would have been awkward.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put a pin in this union healthcare story. We're going to keep an eye on it as it progresses naturally. We do have more to discuss. Turning to a fun story, I know something that's close to your heart. Football! But first, let's take a quick break. The World Cup, just like that, has come and gone. It's been a mighty arena of teams from across the globe who have pulled us together at watch parties, at pubs across the city. And I'm not sure if I know a more devoted football fan than you, Rob. I like saying football versus soccer, but you have been engaged on the World Cup. Yeah. What has the World Cup experience been like for you, watching it from our little corner of the world? And did you get out at all? Like, were you?
I actually didn't. I'm a solitary football watcher for the most part. I like to be in my house with my son is very also engaged, and so we watch most of the games together. Often staring at the television because it's just so gripping. There were a few dud games, but it's been fun. It ended up kind of chalk, like literally the semifinals were the top 4 teams were in the rankings. So, and that's never actually happened before. But along the way, there were some terrific Cinderellas. I will say I was skeptical about expanding from 32 to 48 teams. In the end, I'm glad they did. I was happy that some of those teams that wouldn't have made it were there.
A lot more African nations, which is exciting.
And the African nations did really well too. Yeah. They made it a ways, which was great. Egypt and Morocco. DR Congo was a terrific story. I also will say that I listen to about 4 hours of podcasts every day.
Like so engaged. Yeah,
because there was always at least 1 or 2 podcasts on, like, live after the last game of the day. And then first thing the next morning, talking about all the same games and everything, I'm always here for it.
I know. I mean, we chatted last week, and you were like, we pulled you away from the game, and I just like in the moment of like we've got to be watching the World Cup game. I just want to say I was out in California for a lot of it, and I was going down the coast everywhere I went. Like I showed up to my great aunt and uncle's house, and they were like late 80s, and I had no idea they were like having catching up, and then they said, okay, like, but we really want to watch the game. And like every place, we stopped for lunch. People would just come in, like everyone was watching the game from the Northern California to Southern California. And
my mom was like 73, 74, was texting me during the USA games, I was like, Mom, you're watching football? That's great.
That's so awesome. Well, how does the fandom usually go? Because, I mean, me personally, I was largely rooting for teams playing against colonial powers. I know I wasn't alone there. It was all over the internet.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody's kind of has their team, right? Either of their heritage or of their current country or both. You can have you can have dual loyalties in football, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. Yeah, I mean, I was obviously United States 100%. Mexico, I married into a Mexican family. So Mexico is obviously important for us. And then once they were both out, then it was Norway for me, living in Mount Horeb here on the Trollway.
That was so fun watching the Norwegians. That was kind of a brutal defeat.
Yeah, and that's been the great part that's one of the great things about soccer. And it's true in all sports, but I think in soccer even more so, that the soccer is about your connection with a team and the community around the team. So and we saw it with Norway, with Scotland, with DR Congo, with Curacao, and that's just the beauty of the game, really.
It's beautiful. It is so, so beautiful. And talking about our connections to teams, we have a professional team right here. So if folks are fired up about soccer, Flacco Waka, like there's a lot of energy to be had locally.
Yeah, we have a men's professional team and a fully professional. It's lower league, right? It's lower division, but everywhere in the world, every little town has their lower division team that everybody gets behind and loves. We also have a professional women's team now. Their season is done for now, but they'll be back next spring. Engage, I know of a podcast you could listen to if you want to engage more deeply with Forward Madison, the men's professional team. I also recommend folks find a European
Can you say
club.
what that is?
It's called 608 Soccer Show. And it's my beautiful voice, along with my co-host Ethan Maurice, breaking down every game and interviewing players and other folks in the USL ecosystem. And you get connected to that league, and it's very cool. And the goalkeeper from Curacao plays in that league here in the United States for Miami FC. So cool. There are all sorts of connections. But I also recommend folks find a European team to follow, because the English Premier League season starts in August. There's 5 or 6 bars. There's Everton, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, all have supporters group in Madison. I'm a Fulham supporter. So the beauty is, once August comes, you watch your English Premier League in the morning and then your Forward Madison at night. And it's your whole Saturday is booked with soccer, and it's beautiful.
Yes. Okay, so I actually got tapped into this universe and what you're sharing, and also the fact that you're sitting in front of like 20 scarves from different from teams right now is reminding me of, I had a friend, a shout out to Mike Onsrud, who tapped me into the international soccer team and like immediately put a Liverpool scarf around my neck and, hung out at the Baldwin Grill. And like, it truly is like a really fun time. So I double tap that, like find an international team to get behind.
And also don't forget, there's another World Cup coming next year, the Women's World Cup. And that's the chance. That's when we actually have a chance to win. So tune in.
Oh, hey, amazing. Okay, Rob Chappell, executive editor for Madison 365. It's so good to have you on the show. And thanks for all of the good news telling that you did here.
All right. Today. Yeah, thanks, Bianca. I really appreciate it.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Madison. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with someone who likes cheering on a team, be it a candidate, be it a soccer team, being a union effort, any of the above. Yes, share out this episode, help spread the word about CityCast Madison, help folks find us, get engaged in our conversation, and hey, we'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care and thanks for listening.